Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Impact Co podcast episode. I'm your host, Nishlan Govender, and a slightly different topic this week. I had my birthday last week. I turned 34. It's always a reflective period for me, and I was reflecting on how I got to where I am, career-wise specifically, and how difficult the journey was, how non-linear the journey was. And for a lot of people, peers, students that I've lectured at university, more on that a little bit later, it always seems like things happened in a straight line, was very linear, that I knew exactly what I wanted to do straight out of high school, that university was fine, and that I got to where I am today on an easy path. It was nothing like that. And during my journey, whether it be in university or post-university, I always encountered people who just seem to have it all together. And in this new world of social media, it's very easy to get caught up in people's stories where everything seems hunky-dory. And in this sort of career path that I'm in now, where I've had the chance to speak to more students, I realized that more and more people had my kind of journey, the journey where you didn't know what you wanted to do. You started down maybe the wrong path. You had to meander for a bit and figure out what you wanted to do. There were ups and downs. And now you're at a point where if you're early in that journey, you might be a little bit despondent, like I was at certain phases. So I wanted to walk you through that path for me, give you a sense of how I got to where I am, and effectively say in podcast form that you shouldn't really give up. The journey can be long, can be arduous, but it's fulfilling, especially if you keep at it and get to the end. So it's sort of my life in finance in a 30-minute podcast. And for those of you who are in high school, in university, maybe you finish university, you're not sure which area you want to sort of move into. Hopefully this gives you a little bit of context into it might not happen on day one, but if you keep putting one foot in front of the other, maybe it will come right, like it did for me. So you have to go all the way back to high school for me, where I have a subtle brag, but it's not a brag because of how the story sort of goes into from high school to university. I had really good high school marks. In the context of South Africa, I did 6 subjects at the time. That was normal. I was the last grade 12 student or matric student to do that. And I had 6 A's. Comfortable, many marks in the 90s. Destroyed high school, did exceptionally well. I know that sounds super braggy, but you'll see how it didn't really work. And so next step, you have to pick something to do in university. And if you have 6 A's in South Africa, even 5 A's or 4 A's, the world is kind of your oyster. And that's where you often have an issue almost, because as a high school student, maybe you're 16, 17, 18, how do you end up picking a major for the rest of your life? Because that's effectively what you're doing, right? You're going to pick a 4-year program and probably do that work for the rest of your life. But it's not that obvious, right? I don't expect a teenager to be able to figure out what they want to do for the rest of their life. And that's the kind of position I was in. Now, I don't know if this still happens, but when I got good marks in grade 11 going into matric, many people said because I was good at maths, good at physics, that I should get into actuarial science. Why? Well, you're good at maths. Obviously, you should do actuarial science. It was a very popular thing for people with good marks to do back in the day. I had a couple of bursary offers for it. One of them at UCT, the University of Cape Town. And I effectively took it because I was good at mathematics more than anything else. I hope that kind of career advice is not happening now, but it was at my stage. And when I got to university and looked at my actuarial science class, it felt like a lot of people were there for exactly the same reason. In other countries like the United States, you effectively do an undergraduate degree before figuring out what you want to do at postgrad level. And I think that's probably a better way to go about doing it. You mature in the university setup, figure out what you want to do, and then effectively do sort of a master's program. I used inverted commas there in the South African context, to then specialize after having gained some experience. And sure, you pop out of varsity with your final qualification, maybe in your mid to late 20s. But I would argue that even though you don't have the head start, you probably pick the thing you really want to do. We don't do that in South Africa. We kind of go the opposite route. You turn 17, you pick a degree. And for some people, that's what they stick with for the rest of their lives, even if they don't enjoy the degree or the work. I remember in high school, I wanted to be an engineer because I loved physics. And some of the career advice I got was, well, if you become a chemical engineer, you're going to effectively test chemicals on baby rabbits. That's literally the advice I was given. And I mean, which 17-year-old wants to kill rabbits, you know? So I kind of moved on from chemical engineering just for one stupid reason. So I would say seek as much career advice as possible. Yes, you're a teenager, but try and be as well read as possible. I think the internet, as we sit here today, is a blessing, is a curse, and in this case, a significant blessing, because you can go and see what a day in the life is of a chemical engineer, a software engineer, an investment banking professional. We didn't have that back in the day. You kind of had to know someone in the industry that you could job shadow, and that wasn't exactly easy to do for people who didn't have access. So read widely, try and figure out what you want to do, and take solace in the fact that even if you get to university and you don't pick the thing you want to do, then you can and should change. You're making a decision for the rest of your life. I know financially that might not be possible, but you have to really put in context what the 4 years of university will mean for the rest of your life. Okay. Now, I have to also say that as South Africans, and I'm going to say South Africans in general, maybe this is different for you, but there was way more focus for me on high school than there was in university. I think it's because high school is just way more understood in the context of parents, grandparents, family members, etc. So I was always told, get as high marks as you can in high school, get 6 A's in high school, aim for the top, you want to be the best. And I sort of had an achievable goal and I got there. But no one really puts in context what university is. For me, that was partly because many members of my family didn't know how have any context of university because they didn't go. And therefore, for many students, they walk into varsity day one and they're kind of lost, you know. Not only are they lost, they're kind of fatigued and burnt out, because if you put all this focus on finishing high school and doing well at finishing high school, you kind of get to university day one and think, well, job done, I did what I was supposed to do. And you don't really realize that 4 years at university is actually way more important than high school. In fact, I would say that you should underperform in high school, get into a university program, even with the bare bones that's required to get in, and then do really well at university, which is way more important. It's kind of the other way around in South Africa, which is problematic. Needless to say, I knew so little about university that when I got there, I actually thought that all I needed to do was pass my majors and not pass all the other subjects. So in context, I was studying actuarial science. So there were core actuarial subjects, mathematics, statistics, some actuarial courses in first year. And then I did a business science degree. So you have all these sort of fluff courses, evidence-based management, marketing, macroeconomics, all of those sorts of things. And I thought if I passed the core actuarial-based courses, the majors, I could kind of fail the others. They were just addendums more than anything else. And that is completely wrong. You have to pass every single course in your program. So it just goes to show how little I knew about varsity when I got there. And quite frankly, I was tired post-matric. So, and more than that, I almost didn't know what I was getting into. What is actuarial science? What job are you going to end up with post finishing the degree? Needless to say, I didn't do very well. I wouldn't say I flunked out, but I didn't meet the necessary benchmarks that you needed to continue in the program. Like in South Africa, in the University of Cape Town, you need 70% for maths and 70% for statistics to get into second year classes. And I didn't exactly meet those criteria because I was kind of burnt out and didn't know why I was doing what I was doing. So get into second year, and so almost by chance, part of the actuarial program has finance as sort of one of those addendum courses, that one of those nice to haves from a business science perspective. And I actually enjoyed it. I enjoyed finance. I enjoyed the topics inside finance. I enjoyed it more than the actuarial subjects that I was doing. I knew that I didn't want to do actuarial science, especially if I wanted to finish in 4 years, because I was already a little bit behind. And I switched to finance. And as I sit here today, I love my job. I love my career. Getting a finance degree instead of an actuarial science degree was perfect. But in that case, I feel exceptionally lucky, because if you're sitting inside an actuarial degree, for example, and let's assume you don't know this, but your dream job is actually in the STEM field, something in biology or physics or something like that, maybe even a doctor, then you're sort of set quite far behind. You know, you'd almost have to leave commerce to go into that. So I was quite fortunate from that perspective. And sometimes you are lucky in these cases that you fall into something that you wanted to do, or you figure it out a little bit later, hopefully in university. But I guess the message there is keep your eyes and ears open, keep your eyes to the ground, if financially you can move, because I know financially there is a big burden to stay in something because you can't go and pick up another 4-year program. But if you do have the opportunity and if you've kept your eyes open and something else looks attractive, go out there and do it, would be my advice. Okay, so I'm in this finance program and I guess you think it's all hunky-dory now. I go on to have this illustrious career. No. I was sort of behind already because of switching programs. So to finish in 4 years was going to be difficult. But even in that context with respect to university, I didn't realize how important it was to have really good marks in university. And I know that might sound completely ludicrous to some of you, but to others, you get what I'm saying. You're supposed to get really good marks in high school, but no one really says you should be on the Dean's Merit List at university. No one says you should get A's at university. It's always just assumed that if you get a university degree, a good university degree from a decent university, you'll get a good job coming out of there, regardless of whether you got A's or C's. That was the prevailing narrative for me. And I realized that wasn't the case. You come out of university, and rightly so, companies want the best candidates out of those classes. And especially in finance, it's highly competitive because there aren't as many jobs available as you might think, especially in investment banking, management consulting, asset management, where I'm in. Maybe in the STEM fields, if you're, say, a doctor or you're coming out as an engineer, where the supply of candidates is less and the demand is quite significant both here and offshore, maybe then you're walking out with a sort of 60% aggregate, 50% aggregate and easily getting a job. But I have to say, in finance, it is so competitive that you want the best marks. And no one really told me that. If I had to go back to my younger self and speak to him, I would say, listen, high school's important. You have to get into university. You have to get the right mark to get into university, and there are a lot of people competing for spots at the good university, so you want to get good marks, but you almost need to pace yourself marathon style, in the sense that in university you really have to have that gumption and stamina left to go and get really good marks in university, and also as a caveat to all of that, hoping that you pick the right thing. So there is a lot of pressure, right? And I don't think it is said enough. Anyway, by hook or by crook, I come out with a finance degree in 4 years, and I'm supposed to find work, right? But unlike, say, qualifying as a doctor, where the thing you're going to do is be a doctor, at least for a couple of years, doing your community service before you think about specializing in what you want to do after that, when you finish with a finance degree, it's not very prescriptive. You could kind of do anything with that inside finance. And that could be investment banking, management consulting, asset management, a whole bunch of other supporting roles. And because I switched into finance, and I loved the finance subjects, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And it was very different from some of my peers who had chosen finance from day one and sort of towards the end were going through internship programs at investment banks, some of them overseas. Some of them had jobs locked up quite early in third year and fourth year, where they knew exactly what they wanted to do. And that was daunting for me because I didn't know what I wanted to do, quite frankly. And I'm sure that's a lot of you sitting here now, because again, maybe you chose finance as your majors, but how are you supposed to know what you're going to do for the rest of your life? No one really tells you. It's this unspoken thing where, sure, they teach you all the theory around these subjects, but no one really talks to you about what you're supposed to do with it afterwards. And that was extremely frustrating. I tried to get into an honors program. So I did finish with a 4-year degree that had an honors, but I was trying to get into another honors program just to give myself some time to figure it out. And already the journey is quite lumpy. It didn't go all my own way at our post-high school into university. But now I try and get into the honors program, and it's basically full FAPM, which is highly sought after in terms of applicants. And I guess I applied late and couldn't get into that and was basically unemployed after 4 years. And there's going to be some of you who are in that position, some of you who are worried about being in that position. Just to say out loud, it happened to me. And you shouldn't feel embarrassed by that. You shouldn't feel like you haven't done enough necessarily because others have. It is a daunting process. It is a daunting world to try and operate in. But you got to keep your head down and you got to keep on it. So I then started working at effectively, I'm using the word company quite loosely here, but it was effectively a business that bought books from manufacturers of books, publishers, etc., and then supplied the likes of exclusive books and things in South Africa, bookstores, effectively. So what did I do there with a finance degree? I did a bunch of accounting for them. Like I'm using accounting very loosely here. More bookkeeping, double entries, that sort of stuff. Accounting wasn't my major, but I was decent enough at accounting that I could do it. I helped them with sort of inventory management, which literally meant like counting books, packaging books for sale and things. Eventually, I started to get more into finance related stuff where I started talking to the owner about sort of hedging currencies and things, because he would bring stuff from overseas and he had a currency risk. But even then, I was kind of talking out my bottom a little bit because I had never done anything like that. I just knew about it from a finance textbook, and I was trying to make this thing more finance related rather than what it was, which is kind of working in a book supply store. And it was tough. The salary was effectively non-existent. I was still getting an allowance from my parents, which is crazy. My parents thought you come out of a university like UCT and get paid bombs of cash. But that wasn't the case. And I kind of felt like a failure at that point, quite frankly. Again, I've talked to students and I've told the story before, and they look at me and go, no, you must be talking nonsense because look at what you do now. But I didn't go all my own way, but I kind of kept at it. And the first thing that kind of worked for me was I entered sort of graduate trainee role at a large asset management company. I'm not going to mention the name, but I mean, you could look it up on my LinkedIn profile or something quite quickly. And I thought this was it, like very prestigious asset management company, graduate trainee program. I'm in it, I finally sort of worked through the worst of it and I'm there. But the asset management company actually hired a bunch of graduates, mostly finance, but from other streams also, to handle a lot of supporting roles in asset management. So I wasn't joining an asset management team or anything. I was literally a client service consultant, which sounds fancy, but it just means that I answered the phone and spoke to retail clients. So clients would call and ask what their investment values were, how do I start a new investment, that sort of thing. Proper call center job, answering the phones from 8 to 5. And it was tough. Like you don't expect to come out of varsity. You expect to be Harvey Specter from Suits, not someone working in effectively a call center. It was a great working environment, great people. The business was excellent, but it's not what I came out of varsity to do. Like if I wanted to work in a call center, I could have left high school and worked in a call center for that matter. What it did allow me to do is learn what an asset management company actually did on a day-to-day basis, which, again, we didn't really discuss in university, quite frankly. And through that experience, I learned about all the different divisions, learned about all the different investment vehicles, how they were taxed, how the products worked, what were all the supporting roles in an asset management company. And that helped me to figure out what I might want to do. Now, the boring part of this is that I effectively realized I wanted to join an investment team, which is the core part of an asset management business, right? I guess lo and behold. But a number of people who worked alongside me in these call centers who were also finance graduates realized that they wanted to work in IT inside finance. They wanted to work in product development inside finance. They wanted to work in supporting functions like Lisp operations, which I'm not going to explain, but and you start to realize that there are a whole number of careers inside finance that we don't even know about, apart from just the core stuff, like being an investment banker, being a management consultant, or being a portfolio manager. Anyway, I chose the hardest thing. I want to be an equity analyst, and then I want to be a portfolio manager, and that's what I want to do. And when I realized that that's what I want to do, it filled me with a lot of joy because I had clarity. So the next thing you do is you apply for jobs. I did that. I was not very successful. But finally, I found this specialist recruiter who had done exceptional work for some of my friends in finance. So I went to see him. He specialized in sort of analyst recruitment for asset management companies. And I sat in front of him and I said, look, this is how I got to where I am. I'm ready to go. I want to join an asset management team. And quite frankly, he looked at me. Some of the conversation was, give up on that dream because it's just too difficult. You didn't get good marks at university. You didn't get into that field. You didn't become an analyst straight out of varsity. You don't have an investment portfolio that you can quote to people. There's way too many people in front of you in the queue. You're not going to get there. That was the sum total of the advice. And it was devastating, quite frankly, because throughout this entire journey that had so many ups and downs, you finally feel like you're in the up part where things are going well, only for you to be absolutely sort of taken out at the knees by advice like this. And you might be in your career and you might be hearing these sorts of things. But again, I would recommend just keep at it, keep bettering yourself, keep focusing on what your core goal is. That's way more important. Anyway, I kept applying for jobs. I kept learning more about the industry. I kept myself up to date with as much finance talk as I could, reading articles, reading books, immersing myself, watching finance-related movies, all sorts of stuff. Because I had started to develop a passion. Yes, I developed it late, but no one says that you need to sort of come out of the womb and know that you want to be an equity analyst or an investment banker. That is crazy. After applying for many jobs, doing many interviews, I finally got a chance to interview at the company that I'm at now. And the woman who hired me, who I still work with today, we're peers now, sort of said to me, hey, you had these really good high school marks and really poor university marks. And I just brought you in because effectively I was curious, like, this CV interested me because of the ups and the downs. Like, how can someone go from 6 A's in high school to sort of mediocre university to sort of writing a decent cover letter showing interest? Like, it was just an interesting thing. And that for me was lucky, because a lot of people just look at university marks. And if you looked at that, I could have been screened out quite easily, but I wasn't. Took my chance, did some assessments there, got hired as a fund research analyst. So I wanted to be an equity analyst. I wanted to analyze companies. That would have me in an investment team where I would be an analyst, there'd be a portfolio manager over me building portfolios. A fund research manager is almost part of a multi-management team where you analyze other fund managers and find the best fund management teams to invest in. It's sort of a layer above fund management. And we'll get into it at some point in another episode. But it was a way into the industry. It wasn't exactly what I wanted to do, but it put me in an asset management team where there were other equity analysts in a slightly different team, other portfolio managers. I could learn. I was kind of in the right space for once. And to cut a long story short, 10 years later, I'm still there. I went through the ranks of fund research analyst to equity analyst when a space opened up, to portfolio manager eventually. And now, I don't know what it is, 6 years later from becoming equity analyst and then portfolio manager to now leading the team. So effectively, I'm the head of equities inside an asset management business. And if you look at where I am now, it seems like everything worked. Okay. But if anything, this episode and the details I've shared in this episode shows you that definitely wasn't the case. And for me, it's an important message because it's almost like if I could do it, I feel like others can do it. And if you're at a point where you feel despondent right now, and you're at those points in the journey that I was at, where you're just at the bottom, you kind of just have to keep at it. You kind of have to keep focusing on what your goal is. There's a combination of perseverance and, quite frankly, luck that can help you to get there. And I guess that's why I wanted to make this episode, to just show you that it was possible, to show you what an alternative route looks like that leads you from sort of high school all the way to, I guess, a flourishing career. Now I'm very happy with what I do, but not in that traditional path that you see on the internet or amongst your peers or on social media. I felt so bad about how I did at university that I actually went back to do my master's, almost to prove to myself that I could do well at university if I wanted to be there for the right reasons. And yeah, I did a master's in finance, came out with a master's with distinction and a dissertation with distinction. So I feel like that journey is complete. But even inside that, there was an opportunity to lecture. And old me in university the first time would never have applied for that because I felt like a useless student, quite frankly. But new me went, I'm in this industry and I made it and I worked hard and I've done well in this master's. I can teach, I can share my thoughts and my views and my journey. And I did it. I told them my whole story, like I'm telling you now. They love the story, and I've lectured at UCT for a few years now when other lecturers are away on sabbaticals and things. And I've loved it. And it kind of completes the cycle for me in saying that I am a proper professional because I can go back and teach, because it's probably the last bastion if you can go back and impart knowledge to the next generation and be given the responsibility and the trust to do that, especially given my journey to how I got to where I am. So I still do that when I can. And I think I will do that later in my career because I enjoy it. But as I sat there on my birthday, I'm 34 now, I sort of went, yes, I'm the head of equities. Yes, I'm a portfolio manager. Yes, the portfolios are doing well, especially the global ones. We've got some problems on the local side, but that happens. I've got a master's now. I finished my CFA. I've lectured at university. It feels like I've done a lot and I've done what I wanted to do. But I'm making this episode because the thing that came to mind more than anything else in this reflective journey was how difficult it was to get here. And not for 1 second do I want to sit here and have other people look at my journey and go, oh, well, it was easy for him. It wasn't. And for any of you, whether you're struggling in high school, struggling in university, don't have a job outside of university, just know that it can get better. You just have to keep pushing forward. Throughout this thing, I've talked about the pitfalls we fall into because we don't have the right support structure, the right information, the right knowledge. We can't let that hurt us. We need to sort of seek the right information, seek the right people. And I think in this modern world, we can, using the tools at our disposal. To that end, if you're listening to this podcast, if you are one of those people, and I don't care if you're in finance or an engineering student or whatever, reach out to me, DM me on Instagram or message me on LinkedIn. And I'm happy to listen, to try and mentor if I can, to give advice if I can, or just tell you to keep going, because I had people in my life. My girlfriend, who is my wife, or my girlfriend at the time was my wife now, was always extremely supportive. And you need people like that in your life. And if I can be that person for you, just to tell you to keep going, I'm happy to do that. So DM me on Instagram, my personal account, message me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to have a conversation with you because I want to be that person who gives back to the industry and to people, because I needed that at some stage and it just wasn't there necessarily. If you've gotten to the end of this episode, I assume you were like me in a tough journey, because it was an easy journey. You probably switched off or didn't even click on the episode title. So I wish you everything of the best. Thank you for listening. Share your thoughts, share your comments, share your journey with me, whether it's in the comment section of Instagram posts or inside my DMs and things personally. Like and subscribe. I'm going to talk more about finance, but I'm also going to talk more about careers, life, how we get to where we're supposed to be, especially in the sort of non-linear world. So yeah, join us for the journey, join me for the ride, and we'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.